Great men are not born great, they grow great. Hey, what's up, bookworms and capo regime? Mike back today to talk a little Mario Puzo, and that begins, guys, by talking 1959's The Godfather, guys. Maybe the greatest American novel of all time. Now, it feels weird to say this very, very Italian book is considered an American classic, but hey, this is the business that we've chosen, right? That won't be the last one of those guys. So, overnight sensation, a massive, massive hit when it came out. This book really kind of changed everything in fiction at the time. Stayed a New York Times bestseller for 67 weeks. Sold 2 million copies in the 9 million copies the first 2 years, and 30 million copies worldwide as of today. Estimated. I think it's more, but hey, whatever. Spawned one of the greatest movies of all time. That's something that I think that'll probably come up a few times in this. And yeah, guys, one of my favorite movies ever made. And this is the first time I've read this book. So why did it take me so long to read it? I don't really have an answer for you. It's just something that never really came up. I think it was because I love that movie so much. I was a little scared that anything that was kind of different in the book, I might just be like, why would you do that? Even though this came first, that's just how these things work. Usually I'm the other way around. But with that one, it's a movie I've seen more times than I can count. And yeah, it kind of put it off for a long time. But did this book live up to the high expectations I have due to that movie? Well, we're going to talk about that today, guys. We're going to begin like usual by talking about what is the book about. Now, Don Vito Corleone, the head of the New York Mafia family, oversees his daughter's wedding with his wife Carmela. His beloved son Michael has just come home from the war, but does not intend to become part of his father's business. Through Michael's life, the nature of the family business becomes clear. The business of the family is just like the head of the family, kind and benevolent to those who give respect, but given to ruthless violence whenever anything stands against the good of the family. Don Vito lives his way of life in the way of the old country, but times are changing, and some don't want to follow the old ways and look out for community and family. An up-and-coming rival of the Corleone family wants to start selling drugs in New York, but they need the Don's influence to further this plan. The clash of the Don's fading old-world values and the new ways will demand a terrible price, especially from Michael, all for the sake of family. Guys, 1959, The Godfather. Now, when we talk about what makes this book good or bad, I think for me the good is really, you've probably heard this before, but the importance of family. That this isn't a story about the mafia per se, but it is about the family that kind of works in the mafia. That's really what it's about. There's two families here. There's the mafia family, the crime family, and then there's Don Corleone's actual family, and then the kind of things that go on behind the curtain, and trying to find that balance of life between those two things. And sure enough, when times come up where you're going to have to kind of make a choice between what's right for your actual blood family and what's right for the crime family. I think that's something great. So yes, this is an organized crime story, but that's almost a background. I mean, it's very, very prevalent, don't get me wrong, and it has some of the biggest things in the book, but it is very much about the Corleone family and basically doing this like passing of the torch and naming of the heir, so to speak. So these are things that you might not think going into a book like this if you haven't seen the movie yet. All this stuff, guys, I'm pretending you haven't seen the movie. I'm going to get that up front here. I think that you will be like, okay, well, I'm just expecting, a bunch of mafia hits, and I'm expecting a bunch of, Sopranos quotes or something. And I think with this, you're going to realize that, guys, it's not what you're expecting at all. It is very much a character study on these characters, and the character is one of the great things about this book. You think about the journey that some of the characters take on here. Think about Michael, obviously, first. Just watching his arc through the course of the story from, reluctance, kind of wanting to stay, not I don't want to say embarrassed of his family, but kind of wanting to keep, at a distance. I love my family, but I've got this beautiful girlfriend and this nice family, and I kind of just want to live a normal life. And you see him just kind of have a slow descent in his lust for power. And I think it's just an amazing, amazing character study. You look at someone like Johnny Fontaine, who made it big, and what he actually goes through. And basically, with his story, it's almost like a what happens after happily ever after thing. And that's always a fun character journey. But then you just got some of the best characters ever in fiction, guys. Vito, Sonny, Tom Hagen, Luca Brasi. Just characters that even if you haven't read this, you've probably heard these names. It's just some really, really great stuff. And I like that this is really about trying to, like I said, trying to balance your blood family and your mafia family. But this is a story about family past and future. I think that's something that's very important because you do get to see some things about how we got here that if you've seen the movie Godfather Part 2, you see some of those things. So that's in this book. But the decisions that they make here are going to, impact everything for generations of this family. And that's another thing that I really do like here is you do get kind of an unexpected coming of age story in this, is you do see Don Vito's his rise to power. And you see it really from the very, very beginning. And like I said, if you've seen Godfather 2, you've seen these parts. But this is in this book, which actually surprised me. I didn't think that stuff was going to be in this book. And it's very, very satisfying because you see Tessio and you see Clemenza. And you see really how those three had kind of been attached at the hip since they were teenagers. And they've been with him this whole way, and so you can understand. It makes you better understand why those two are so loyal to Vito, and it's really, really great stuff. And you see it really from the beginning. How he came up to power and how he came to deciding this is going to be the life for me, and it's a believable thing. It isn't anything that's like, oh, okay, well, one day he decided he was going to get a gun, he was going to run the town. That's not exactly how it works. It is a little bit more, but you can see even then that Vito has these principles. He has these rules that he's done. He's not the type that you can buy him. I think, and I don't mean like buy him, like put in your pocket. I mean like you can't like buy his services. Like you're not just gonna go pay him to do something for you. He wants your respect. He wants your respect, and then he will give you what you want, no questions asked. But, there is a little fine print there. Someday I'm going to come to you for a favor, and you cannot deny me. It's a great, great business plan that he has developed, and seeing how it all really started, all the way from the time that he was, I don't want to give too much away for people who haven't read it, but or seen the movies, is that, seeing how he became had to basically grow up too quick because of the things that happened to his family. And it's a great, great journey that you think about The Godfather, you think it's the journey of Michael, and The Godfather Part 2 is you get to see some other things, Michael in full power, and then you get to see, the coming of age for Vito. The way that they do it in this book, I think it is obviously paced much better, is that you get the flashback of Vito, and you get to see that kind of concurrently with what's going on in the story. And I think that's a great way that he breaks things up here in this book, because there's I think 8 or 9 parts, and each one is really just kind of self-contained, and I like that a lot. So when he does those sections of just Vito, it's not bouncing back and forth. This isn't every other chapter we're going to go back to a flashback. You get it in one drop, and it usually, in most cases like that, I'm going to say, I don't like that because it took me too much out of the story proper. When you go for a flashback for too long, I think about The Fisherman that I read last year. It went to a flashback for 60% of the book. That's too long. This isn't that long, but it is long, but you're going to be so riveted and interested, you're going to be like, I kind of want to stay here for a little bit. So I think it's really perfectly paced the way that he does it. And it's just terrific stuff. I think one of the big ones here is the dialogue. I mean, obviously you think about The Godfather, you think of the great, great quotes that are in the movie. Well, guys, most of those quotes are in this book. And you're going to be like Leo every time you see one. You're going to be pointing at it. That you've seen that. That quote. Because you've seen that movie like me a dozen times. And that dialogue is all really good. And you think a book like this with an organized crime book is that dialogue is going to be about 90% of it. And then you got your hits or your betrayals for the rest of it. Those things are there. But the books like this, there is going to be a lot of sitting down, negotiating, talking, business. What should we do? Planning, things like that. And that it never really drags because the dialogue is just so good and so real, and it definitely would seem like something that people would be saying to people, how they would talk in the 1950s. It's very, very good. It never once feels like, well, this just sounds like an information dump, and that isn't anything that anybody would really say. No, it is very much a real conversation that you would kind of be overhearing from, sitting across the room, hearing these people talk. It's really, really great. And I think the one thing it does so well is it builds tension. You can have a scene, there's a scene where the 5 families are sitting at a table trying to negotiate an agreement after a character death, and it's so tense because you think at any minute everyone could be pulling weapons, and it's just so good. And the dialogue was great, and Vito has some of the best speeches in this entire book. It's just so good, guys. I can't get past the dialogue, how great it really, really was. And you can see that, Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo, obviously, being the writer, when they wrote the screenplay, they had some really great dialogue already to work with. And you can see why a lot of it is a one-to-one translation from the screen, or from the page to the screen. But I love the themes of loyalty and respect. I already talked about how Don Vito kind of already has like this code in place, and it's something that clearly he has done since he was a young man. And hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the idea of, no daughter can refuse a request on his daughter, or no Don can refuse someone's request on his daughter's wedding day. And so, so you see everyone's trying to get any kind of favor that they can in place, or make sure they get a meeting with him on that day. So loyalty and respect is a big deal, but I think that's what makes the betrayals hurt so much more, because you think about, you're dealing with organized crime. There's going to be a lot of dirty money floating around, and that's going to obviously cause a lot of temptation. You're going to have a lot of outside factors, and there are some people in here that may not have the Corleone family's best intentions at heart. And it's going to come full stop more than once in this book. And you will be completely shocked. But I think that, again, the tension just builds so good. So many times, even if you know what's coming, it's that thing like seeing a train coming and you're a deer in headlights and you can't move because you're just riveted, and you know it's coming, but you can't stop it, but you're definitely not going to stop reading. But I mean, it's all kinds of things. It isn't just one thing. I mean, you can think about like the horse's head, or Michael, how he deals with his enemies, or the scene in the restaurant, or the betrayals and the hit jobs and stuff. It's stuff that you can see coming, and you know it's coming, and he just does such an incredible job of building tension and making it so just like you can't blink while you're reading it. It's just captured so well on the page here, as is the emotion. This book has some serious emotions, be it, death, dealing with loss, grief, anger, betrayal, denial, compassion, intimidation, you name it. There's so many different levels of emotion in this book, and you're going to feel it right with the characters. You do get attached to so many of these characters that you're going to feel their victories and their losses right there with them, and it's going to be incredibly satisfying. It's going to be incredibly heartbreaking on several occasions, but you are going to find things to relate to these characters, even though they are considered the bad guys, and I think that's something that's very common now. Obviously, anti-heroes dealing, kind of rooting for the bad guys kind of thing, but I want to say this is, something that kind of like set the template. Like, you love The Sopranos, it's kind of set the template for something like that. The Goodfellas. I think that this is really setting the stage for all the things that we've come to know today about how people write an anti-hero. I feel like this is one of the best and earliest that I've read to actually do it, and do it well. But, guys, is everything perfect? Of course not. There are no perfect books. If you're going to say the bad, now that's a word I like to use lightly here. These might not be bad for you. There's maybe some couple things that didn't really work out for me. I think maybe it's because I'm too close to the movie. I will admit that some things I look at from, I love that movie. I think that movie is perfect. There's not a wasted second on the screen. So there are some things that in the book that they have cut out of the movie that were maybe just like, I can see why they cut that. Johnny Fontaine, way too much in this book. Way too much. And I look back at it and I'm like, what purpose did it really serve to the overall story? I mean, it's kind of neat to see what happens when you make it big, and then things kind of just like, what happens after that? That's cool and all, but the whole time I'm in those really extremely long Johnny Fontaine chapters, I'm wanting to get back to the Corleone family. I really am. Same with Lucy Mancini and Dr. Jules. Again, those could have been nice side characters. I didn't need entire sections with those characters because I don't feel like they served a great purpose. And but again, guys, this is me nitpicking because that's really all I have wrong with this book. Yeah, it's that good. But I will say those chapters are a bit long, and I will admit that might just be because I am so married to the movie at this point that maybe I just didn't want to spend that much time with characters that were basically cameos or not even in the movie. But yeah. Also, guys, there are going to be some outdated themes. Like if you're reading a James Bond book, this is very much dealing with, patriarchy. It's going to be doing things like that. So if you're worried about things like that, yeah, those are there, guys. This was written in 1959. So those things are 69. Did I say 59 at the beginning? I might have. I think it's 69, right? This come out in 1969? I think it came out in 1969. Jeez, I don't even know. great research goes in these videos, you guys. 1969, but the story takes place in the mid-50s. So again, those themes like you would read in an Ian Fleming novel are going to be very much here. Also, guys, the violence, there is a lot of violence in that movie. There's even more in the book. There are some more stuff with harming of women and children in here than there was in the movie. So that doesn't bother me, but I think that might be something that I would bring up for someone if you are worried about things like that. Yeah, you might want to skim over that part or, avoid altogether, because if that stuff does bother you, it is here. But again, these are bad people that you're reading about. These are some bad people. So take that for what you will. How about why you guys should read it? I think if you're like me, you've seen the movie more times than you can count. Don't worry. The movie is in the book, because I was kind of worried. Like I said, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this because I love that movie so much. I think you do not need to worry. That movie is in this book. And I say kind of treat it like a director's cut in your mind. That's what really helps me. Almost like a Earth 2 or a different Path of the Beam if you're a Dark Tower person. And it's like these are the same characters, and what happens in the story is almost identical to that movie. Maybe a couple of different choices. So like say an Earth 2 or a different Path to Beam version of these characters made like one or two different decisions. That's kind of how it feels. And like I said, you get some focus on some characters that really were small roles in the movie. And yeah, I think that's something that is really, really great if you were looking for that. Because for me, I love the movie. I'd like to get more of the movie. This feels like I'm getting more to that movie. So that really did help me quite a bit, why I enjoyed this so much. If you're interested in organized crime, guys, I think this is the gold standard. This is the one that everyone has tried to copy. This is the Lord of the Rings of organized crime, and that it influenced everyone, and they're still trying to emulate this today. So I think there's so many other things that people love, the Goodfellas, the Sopranos, things like that. Obviously, The Godfather is a huge influence on those stories. So, yeah, I think if you want to see kind of the roots of where it all came from, this is definitely the place to start. But if you're not interested in organized crime, but you want a good story about family, this is going to be your jam. You're going to love it. If you read Jade City or the Greenbow Saga by Miss Fonda Lee, you're going to like this story, because that's why I like Jade Cities, because I like The Godfather so much. In fact, it's what encouraged me to actually finally read this book. And when I just talked to Fonda Lee about it, and she obviously had the same great things to say about the Godfather movie. So the fact that it is still influencing authors today that are writing new fantasy books and being very much inspired by The Godfather shows the lasting impression that this book has left on the world. So yeah, guys, it's just it's an American classic that I think everyone should read. I think you'll be better for it. But as for my final thoughts, guys, like I said, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this being so close to it, but it completely knocked my socks off. I had a blast with this. Even those parts I said I wasn't wild about, I was never to the point where I was like, I think I need to put this down for a while. I went through this book in like 3 days. I had a great time with it. I love hanging out with those characters, and it leaves you wanting more. Now, I don't know if I'm going to continue with this because I've always heard the Sicilian, I think is the next one. I've always heard those sequel books, not quite that great. But I never say never on these things. And I like this so much, and I think that Mario Puzo is such a great writer that maybe I would find something that I really like in there. And again, being so detached, the story being so detached from the movies, maybe I would find different things to really, really enjoy about it. It's very much a character study. So if you're like me, guys, and you are a character first person, it's very much a character study about the lust for power and trying to choose between, like I said, your blood family and your mafia family. So that was The Godfather, guys. An incredible, incredible book. It was my book of the month last month for good reason, because this is a book that had a mountain of expectations, and not only did it meet them, guys, it exceeded them. So I implore you, please check this book out. I think that you will enjoy it. So guys, The Godfather by Mario Puzo. Have you read it? What did you think? Why don't you drop in the comments and let me know, and I'll make you an offer that you can't refuse down below.